So this is me recently at my local water, Roslyn Lee, on a typically grey winter's morning. Today's video I'm going to feature what tactics to use in winter and how I go about fishing and the things that I do to catch fish. A lot of people speak to me saying they don't fish during winter, and I can understand to a certain degree. It's cold, it can be miserable at times, but also in my opinion winter fishing can be some of the most fun of the year. I'm not a fair weather fisherman. I'll fish in any weather, and I'll be fishing all winter. Now, there's definitely things to bear in mind while fishing in winter, and there's definitely methods and tactics to use to help you catch. There's nothing worse than going out on a cold, wet day and blanking, but very rarely happens in winter, to be honest. So today's video, I'm going to look at how you catch fish in winter and how I approach today's fishing. My first tip is always tie up your casts in advance. Now, I tend to do this no matter what the season, but especially in winter, you don't want to be messing about at the side of the water trying to make up leaders or anything like that. Far too cold on the hands for that nonsense. So I always tie quite a lot of casts in advance, so I'll have every setup imaginable, even in winter. So I'll have a few bungs, I'll have 2 lures, I'll have 1 lure setups. I tend to fish with non-slip loop knots, so again, easier to do it when you're nice and dry and warm in the house, and just have all the casts made up ready, with the flies tied on them already. You can always swap over flies on the day, and it just means if it's that cold that your hands don't really like trying to tie on any flies or set up leaders, then it's already done. So yeah. Always have straight line nymphing rigs, washing line legs, even dry fly rigs set up, even in winter. Tip number 2 is keep warm. Seems a bit obvious, but put extra layers on. You can always take them off. That's one of the key things in winter. A lot of people don't like getting cold, but if you layer up properly, there's no reason why you'd be cold. I also take hand warmers with me, just a bit of relief sometimes during the day. And you can always change methods to make sure you keep a bit warm. So if you're getting quite cold, start stripping lures. That'll soon heat you up. Or if your hands are freezing, you can fish the bung for a while to get a rest. But very important to enjoy your day and keep warm. As you can imagine, up here in Scotland, this is a common scene. Winter time tends to be wet and windy, and a full set of good waterproofs and a good pair of boots, and keep nice and dry. But it must be mental. So next is something I'm asked quite a lot, but it's which fly line do you decide to use? So you turn up at a venue in winter, and how do you know which fly line to use? Now the answer is you take a guess. So depending on the conditions, so a day like this, I was out, it wasn't especially cold, but it was still cold, but it had been a settled temperature. So when it's like that, I don't expect the fish to be hugging the bottom. It's not just a quick cold snap. So on a day like that, a little bit of ripple on the water, I tend to start out on a midge-tip line, and just pulling back a damsel or a fry pattern, something like that. That tends to always be my go-to. If you then don't get any joy, a good idea is to either start the countdown method on an intermediate line to try and get the depth, or you can even use the bung and set a couple of flies at different depths, and that way you can quickly try and work out which depth the fish is feeding at. So on this occasion, a nice steady retrieve with one of my yellow olive fry patterns and into a fish. Always good getting there quite early as well. You tend to find before the fish have been disturbed, you can try and gauge where they are, or how deep they're sitting as well. Bit easier than if you turn up halfway through the day. So I tend to use, mostly in winter, either a midge tip or a slow intermediate. Favourite intermediate line is definitely the Aqualux. Really good line. Highly recommend it. And also a floating line. You fish the bung quite a lot in winter. It can be a nice break from getting your hands freezing, stripping the line through your hands. So all types of lines in winter really. When it's a quick cold snap, definitely a deep sinking line. So on a small water like this, a dive 5 or even a dive 3 is probably enough. Get you down to the bottom quick enough. And some days when it's been quickly cold overnight, quick frost, you'll find the fish tend to hug the bottom. So a deep sinking line, either retrieving lures or let it hit the bottom and stick a floating fly like a booby or a fab on there. That'll always bag you a few fish. Something else that's key in winter is the quality of the water. So if you're fishing and it can be two extremes in winter, I find the water can be crystal clear because there's not really any algae in the water at that time of year. So it can either be crystal clear and that will affect how you fish, or it can be the opposite. So a lot of the still waters that I fish at get quite muddy when it rains. So yeah, just the other day I was out and it was like a muddy puddle, and that definitely affects how you fish. If it's dirty water, then you're talking very dark patterns and retrieving it slowly so the fish can see it, but it can be quite tricky. Definitely more of a challenge than crystal clear water. So yeah, if the water's crystal clear, then I would say fish just one lure if you're fishing lures, or if you're fishing a team of flies, more naturals, then increase the distance between your flies. So yeah, if it's clear water, one fly or quite a big space in between your flies. If it's dirty water, you're wanting dark flies, and if you're fishing a team, you can have them a lot closer together. So the next thing I'm asked quite a lot is what type of retrieve to use. Now in winter, I would say all of them. You want to fish static, you want to fish fast, you want to fish slow. It really just depends what the fish want on that day, and especially in winter, it can vary from day to day. So you tend to find if it's extremely cold, the fish get a bit sluggish, and fishing static or slow will get you best results. And if it's settled temperatures, the fish will be more willing to chase. So if you're stripping back a fry pattern or a snake or something like that, if it's more settled, then there's more chance they'll be willing to chase. But really it's a case of using all types of retrieve on any given day. But again, it's an educated guess. If it's really cold, I would fish static or extremely slow. And if it's not extremely cold, then just play about with retrieves until you find which one's working. Next thing to consider is the type of flies you're using. So winter time is associated with lure fishing, but it's not all about the lures, and every type of fly you'd normally use will work in winter as well. It's just it might be limited depending on hatches. What I tend to like to do is when I'm first starting my day and trying to find a fish, I'll use a reliable fly, something like a damsel, or particularly recently a yellow squirmy on the bung has proved irresistible. So when I'm trying to gauge who the fish are, I tend to use something I know works and works well. But yeah, what I tend to do in winter is try and have a bit of fun with flies, to be honest. I really like using fry patterns, as you'll have seen. And at the right time of day, when it heats up a bit, you will get a hatch coming on, and I love to fish nymphs and even dries if given the opportunity in winter. It is more limited, but still rewarding fishing the naturals in winter, and yeah, I would suggest doing it at the hottest time of the day or when you see a hatch coming on. Another thing I like to do in winter is, just because I like to test out patterns and have a bit of fun in winter, is if I catch a fish on a pattern, I tend to change it. I'm not really interested in standing catching the fish all day on the same fly. Obviously if you're in a competition, it might be different, but yeah, I like to catch a fish, change the fly, try and see what patterns work, especially if you tie your own flies. It's quite rewarding to try different variations, and yeah, to me it just makes it a more fun fishing experience. So as you can see me getting this fish to the net, let's try and bring it all together. So in winter time, it's all about using flies that you're confident with first, I would say. You're trying to gauge where the fish are in the water, and not only depth wise but peg wise, so it's important to keep moving about. So I tend to use flies I know work really well, spend time at an area fishing those flies, changing the depth. So in this example, this is me starting out my day, and what I've went is a bung, so set a fly at 3 foot and 6 foot with a yellow squirmy on the point and an egg on the dropper. This is just a combination I'm confident with, and it lets me quickly get an idea of where they are in the water. So on this day, setting up on a bung to start with, just to try and gauge the depth. And yeah, not much wind as well this day, which also favours the bung, so a solid start. So now that I know that there's fish in the area, I can switch over to use my 12-foot sink tip line. So the fish took at 6 foot down, and the 12-foot sink tip just lets me get down to that depth, and a medium retrieve will just hold the fly in that sort of area. As you can see here, I let it sink down, and as soon as I started retrieving, I had a take. So could also use an intermediate or sinking line and just count down with unweighted flies, but the fry patterns I like to use are weighted, so I tend to use my sink tip lines for those, and they get down to a depth, and you can control what depth they're coming back at by varying the speed of your retrieve. Again, it's just playing around. Faster retrieve will bring them higher up in the water, and slow retrieve will keep them deeper, and just playing around with that till you get the right level where the fish are sitting. So after getting that fish to the net, what I did was just change to a different pattern. I knew there was fish in this area, kind of knew what depth they were at, so the next thing for me is just to change the fly up, just to get an idea of what patterns are working, what's doing well. So on this occasion I've changed over to a blue barred fry pattern, a new pattern that I tied up. So yeah, part of the enjoyment is trying out different flies and seeing what results they get. It's definitely easier to catch fish in winter, so mix it up a bit, try new patterns. Once you find where the fish are, most of the time it's quite easy then to continue to catch fish. So yeah, I just like to mix it up, try new patterns, and that's where I get my fun in winter. So on to a different day now, and the difference in this day was the quality of the water. So it was quite murky conditions. So on this day I started off with black patterns. So I was using a black and green fry pattern and just slowly retrieving it back on a 6 foot midge tip. And yeah, key is just slow retrieve and let the fish have a chance to see it basically in the dirty water. Anything too fast, when they see it, it'll be out of reach by the time they can do anything about it. So murky water conditions, dark flies, and slow retrieve. So then as the day's gone on, the hands have got a bit cold, so switched over to using the bung and a black and green crazy egg. Fish static, which in murky water stands out a mile. And yeah, cracked open the hand warmers, fish in the bung, just getting the heat back into my hands and still catching fish. So I change your location now, and as you can see, more into the wind. Now the bung can be a lot less effective in the wind, but I've found you can still fish the bung effectively if you use certain patterns. So in this example I'm using a red squirmy, and I just adjust the depths I'm fishing at. So I'll fish at 5 and 10 feet, and when the wind swings the flies round, they'll rise up a bit in the water. So just adjusting the depth of the flies and keep them spaced a bit further apart, just letting it swing round in the wind, and you can still fish the bung effectively. Mainly do this just to keep my hands nice and warm, get a wee bit of break from retrieving the cold water through your hands. So again, it's just judging it, keep yourself warm, and you can still fish different methods to catch fish. So on this day the water was nice and clear, so I had just the one fly on. I had a coral and pink straggler and the 6 foot midge tip, and the fish weren't that deep in the water, so 6 foot midge tip, my coral and pink straggler, which has been catching me lots of fish during winter, and yeah, into a nice fish. And to finish up with, this was me fishing the bung using a crazy egg. I've been enjoying trying all different colour variations of the crazy eggs, retrieving them or fishing them under the bung. They've definitely proven deadly. So yeah, all manners of colour combinations I've been tying up, and most of them seem to be working, in all honesty. So yeah, hopefully that's been a good insight into what I do in winter. When I've been out, the fish haven't been that deep yet. We've not had any real hard frosts at the minute, so I'll probably do another video in the future covering fishing a bit deeper and getting onto the sinking lines. But yeah, really enjoy fishing in the winter, and yeah, I just find it a lot of fun. So just to summarise, my tactics for winter would be make sure you tie up plenty of casts in advance so you can fish all different methods without having to tie up any in the cold. Keep your strap warm, just use different methods, be sensible, use the right clothing. Second guess where the fish are going to be. If it's freezing cold and it's just a sudden drop in temperature, fish deeper. If it's been settled temperature, they shouldn't be that deep. And just move about, so fish at different depths for a while at a peg, move on until you hit fish, and then play about with your retrieve, see what's working for the fish, which is making them take your fly more often than not.
Is that?
Thanks for watching, guys. Apologies for the delay in posting this video, but it's been a manic few weeks and I'll definitely be posting videos more frequently from now on, so I'll see you next time.